Hi, Mike here. The issue that I'm covering today is one that I've come across many times. In fact, I came across it last week when I was doing some work for a client. I created a VLOOKUP for this client. I could have used XLOOKUP, but they were going to share the file with some users who had an older version of Excel. I tested the VLOOKUP on a few values. Some worked, some didn't. And when you get an inconsistency like that, you wonder what's wrong. One of the most common reasons for a lookup failing is a space in the values in a lookup table. And in this video, I'll show you a couple of ways to solve the problem. If you want to follow along, you can download a copy of the demo file from a link in the description. Here I have some data, and in G2 I have a VLOOKUP. The VLOOKUP searches for the phone number that's in G1 and returns as the answer the model. Or rather, it doesn't. A quick look down column A shows me that that phone number does exist. So what's going on? If I go to column A and I double click on the number that's in A6, which is the one that matches the one that I'm looking for, you can see that there is actually a space after the phone number. If I remove the space, press enter, the lookup works. That space, by the way, is known as a trailing space because it's at the end of the cell entry. Sometimes cell entries have an extra space at the start, and that's known as a leading space. Now, why does that happen? Well, it's usually because the person who entered the data entered spaces in error. But it can also happen if the data is imported into Excel from another source, like a database or a web page. Now, it could be, in this case, a one-off. One cell contains an extra space, but it's likely that there are other cells in column A that have leading and trailing spaces. Looking down column A, I can see one of them has a space at the beginning. If the spaces are at the end, then it's impossible just by looking at the cells to see that. To solve the problem, I'm going to use the trim function. The trim function removes the spaces from the start and end of a cell entry. To do this, I need a blank column. Column D will do. So I'll go up to D2 and I'll put equals trim, open brackets, A2, because A2 contains the text that I want to remove the spaces from. Close the bracket, enter, and copy down. By the way, if you have Excel 365 or Excel 2021, you can do this. Equals trim, open brackets, A2 to A31, close brackets. So instead of putting one cell in the brackets and copying, you can specify the entire range. It doesn't actually matter which way you do it. But now what I've got in column D is the contents of column A without the spaces. So I need to select all the cells in column D, copy, go to A2, click the drop down arrow on the paste button and select paste values. This is Excel for the Mac. It's slightly different on Excel for Windows. The paste values is an icon. On Excel for the Mac, it's a word, but it's the same concept. So paste values. And what that's done is it's copied what's in column D, pasted over what was in column A, and it's pasted the result of the trim formula, not the actual formula itself. Now, I would say that what I've just done is the correct way to deal with this problem. In other words, remove the spaces from the actual data that's causing the problem, the data that was in column A. However, there is another way, and that is to combine the VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP with the trim function. So I've gone onto another sheet here, and if I double click on G2, that's the cell with the actual lookup formula in it, I'm going to edit it and I'm going to wrap A2 to D31 inside a trim function. So I'll put trim, open brackets, close brackets after the D31 and press enter. And that is now working. What this is doing is comparing the phone number in G1 with the no leading and no trailing spaces version of the values in column A, and then returning the corresponding model of the phone. Now, there are plenty of other uses of the trim function, either on its own or combined with another function. I'll leave you with another example I came across recently. I've made up the data, but the concept was the same. The client used the filter function to get a list of employees who had an iPhone and wondered why it only returned 4 records when there were many more iPhone users in the company. It turned out that some of the entries in column C contained a space either before or after the word iPhone. As I just said, the correct way to fix this is to remove the spaces from column C, but an alternative way would be to edit the formula in F2. So if I just double click on F2 to put that formula in edit mode, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the C2 to C31 inside a trim function. So trim open brackets, C2 to C31 close brackets. And what this does is it applies a filter to A2 to C31 and returns the rows where what is in column C after any leading and trailing spaces have been removed is the word iPhone. Now notice it's not removed the spaces from column H, but at least it's returning the correct records. I hope you found the video useful. If you did, please give it a like. And if you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'll catch you in the next video, but until then, have an excellent day.